Thomas A. Kempis' Hi, I'm Hannah, this is Piles of Books, and today I'm going to be sharing about all of the books that I read in May. Alright, before we start, I'm just going to point out I am filming in a different spot. I have filmed up here before, although in a different area of this room. This is like our school room, although we don't do school up here, but school books are kept up here, and kids books, picture books, art supplies, games, all of that. We call it the Snug. So if you get that book reference, let me know in the comments. I had a great reading month. I read more books in May than I thought that I would get to. However, as I was like gathering them up today to make this video, I realized that it just is kind of funny. I had 5 nonfiction books and 3 classics, although 2 of the classics were audiobooks, so they were a bit easier to get through, but I guess I just was in the mood for meatier reading. So without further ado, let's get into the books. The first book that I'm going to share with you today is actually one I did not enjoy it. It was by far my least favorite book of the month. I don't know that I'm going to keep it. I'm probably going to give it 2 stars on Goodreads. But before I share it, I just want you to know that if you do like this book, it's okay. We can still be friends. But I want you to let me know in the comments why you like this book. I am completely open to the fact that it could be something that I'm missing. That's fine. But I didn't like this book. So that one was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I did not enjoy this. The first 2 chapters, I think, I had some underlining and highlighting, and I took a few notes. But then after that, I just, no, it wasn't for me. I fully expected to think that this book was great. I feel like it's on so many book lists, whether they're, like high school book lists, or if you want to be a successful adult, read these books sort of book lists. And truly, I don't know why. I don't know. So anyway, the principles, I think the book, it has like, I don't know if it's 20 principles or something. The principles themselves I thought were pretty good. I liked them. But it was like the expression of those, like actually implementing those principles into your life, felt very, very manipulative. And what kind of gets me is all through the book, he says several times, this isn't flattery, you need to be sincere. I don't know if he uses the word manipulative. I think he does, but just overall, I didn't like this. Now, the more that I was really disappointed in this book. And the more that I thought about it, it's like I don't actually know anybody in real life, and I can't even pinpoint anybody on the internet that has said, okay, you read this book, this is great. I just see it on lists, and it's a good reminder to me that just because it's on, like a revered homeschool list or something, it does not mean that the book is for me or for my family. Anyway, I did not like this, and so I don't think I'm going to keep it. No. But please, if you did enjoy it, I want you to let me know, because I could probably be persuaded to give it another chance or to look at it through a different light. But as of right now, this is probably one of the worst books that I have read all year. But probably the worst one, actually. Okay, now that rant is over, let's just keep talking about the rest of my nonfiction books, because I really enjoyed the other 4 of these. We'll start with Sacred Seasons by Danielle Hitchin. This is a family guide to center your year around Jesus. I really enjoyed this book. I actually did not read the whole thing because it does go through like the entire year. So I read the parts that apply right now. I read, the first chapter that just kind of went over the why behind it, and I skimmed through the other parts of the year, but I didn't actually read every single word. I got some interesting ideas. I got some inspiration for recipes. There are some really yummy looking recipes. I haven't tried any of them yet, but definitely some yummy looking ones, and the photography for the recipe pages is amazing. And then the art was really neat as well. I guess I don't really have a ton to say about this book. I did really enjoy it. Like I said, I got some good ideas out of here, and this is definitely one that, I'll just go back to again and again. The next one that I have here is Thomas à Kempis's Of the Imitation of Christ. So this book, I realize now I need to do a little bit more research on books before I go into them. I enjoy really not knowing much about books before I read them, and I think that's great in some instances. But it seems like this keeps happening to me recently, where I'm like, okay, this isn't exactly what I had in mind. And so if I would have known that this book was set up the way that it was, I would have read it differently. I don't know if there's like 80. They're broken up into different, like, smaller books, so the numbers just repeat themselves. But there are a lot, probably more than 80, I guess. There are a lot of different little chapters in here. This is supposed to be more like a daily devotional. I didn't realize that. So I, would read, like 5 to 10 at a time. So that was unfortunate, just because I was enjoying it and I wanted to get through it in May. But I definitely, this is one that, should have been read over time. So, maybe like January of next year, I would start over and just read, one a day, which is, I assume, how it's intended to be read. Anyway, there was a lot of meat in here. This was a very meaty book, and he shares a lot of scripture. So that was, I appreciated that. I enjoyed that. There were a lot of things that I wanted to mark down, and so again, I couldn't do it all. There were just so many things that I underlined and marked and thought about. It was a very meditative sort of book, I guess. So, let me see if I can find something okay. The cross, therefore, is always ready and everywhere waits for you. You cannot escape it wherever you run, for wherever you go, you carry yourself with you. And everywhere of necessity you must hold fast patience, if you will have inward peace and win an everlasting crown. If you bear the cross cheerfully, it will bear you and lead you to the desired end, to where there shall be an end of suffering. If you bear it unwillingly, you make for yourself a load and burden yourself the more. So, I don't know. It was good. Like I said, I'm glad that I read it. I wish that I had read it slower, but that's okay. And I could have chosen to do that. I was enjoying it, and I just kind of kept reading. So anyway, this was one that I definitely recommend. And then the other two nonfictions that I have kind of go hand in hand. So this one is Even If He Doesn't by Kristen LaValle. What We Believe About God When Life Doesn't Make Sense. This is a book, it's just that. This is a book on grief. She shares two major stories that happened to her and her husband. They had like a church split, or they just left their church where they were in full-time ministry. And so, that was her husband's job. So it was, it was a really big change for their family, and, hurt feelings and all of the things that go along with a church split. And then they also experienced a crisis twin pregnancy that really just kind of put them between a rock and a hard place. And so she shares, this book is just her recounting those stories and the feelings and emotions that they went through, all the questions that they asked about life and about God, and how they rebuilt their faith and are even stronger today. So it was difficult to read parts of it. I cried a lot. There were definitely like some things as I was reading, I was just like, okay, I have said that exact thing or thought that exact thing, but I didn't have the words to say it or to ask it, or, I don't know. It was very relatable. When I was thinking of filming this video, I was like, well, I'll just read a few things out of it, but I don't know if I could really pick, just one or two things to read. Let's see. In our attempts to understand God and move him, we try so hard to fashion him into our image and make him like us. We are uncomfortable in the mysteries of God, and prayer exists in that mystery. But God never asked us to make sense of his ways or pin him down or figure out the exact formula for faith. He just asks us to take a step even when it doesn't make sense. So that is a really good just glimpse into the book, what this book is about. This was great. Another one that I highly recommend. And then along with that, we have A Grief Observed by C.S. Lewis. I did not intend to read this in May. I've been wanting to read it for about a year and a half and have just never gotten around to it. But I think I was ordering some books for school maybe or something, and I needed just a little bit more to get free shipping. So I picked this one up, and when it came, and I realized that this edition is only 76 pages. I didn't know that. I guess I expected it to be longer. Once it came and I realized how short it was, I was like, oh, I could definitely knock that one out. And I felt like it was a good time to read it because I was reading another book on grief. Sometimes, like, I don't like to do that, where I'm reading two books on the same subject at a time, but this worked out really well. So he writes this after his wife dies of cancer, and it's kind of just a collection of his journals in some ways, so it does feel very personal. It's very raw. It's not necessarily written like a journal, but anyway, this was also the same kind of, something happened, it shook him, it moved him, he asked questions, he got angry, he kind of, didn't know where he was going with life, and then he rebuilt his faith, and it was stronger than ever. There was a lot to learn in here. This is one I wouldn't just like recommend it to anyone like I would even if he doesn't. This one does feel a little bit more specific to your spouse passing, but I mean, anybody could read it and get a lot out of it. It was very good, but it definitely did feel more specific to that sort of situation. All right, now to talk about the classics that I read. The first one is Ivanhoe by Sir Walter Scott. I have actually been reading this for a while. I didn't read all of it in May, though I read most of it in May. This book was so fun. I don't know why it took me so long to read it. Like, I was enjoying the story. It definitely, the story itself is actually a pretty short, like, time frame. But it was very detailed, and so it felt very drawn out, and I think I just kind of was getting a little bit bogged down with that. But now that I have finished it, I really enjoyed it. It was very fun, and I don't want to give spoilers. This is what is so hard for me sharing about books, is I don't want to give any spoilers, but all through the book there were different things that felt like another book. And at one point, I was almost frustrated. I was like, okay, somebody stole from somebody, because this is so similar to another famous classic story. And then I realized why it comes about, why it felt very familiar. And so I'm not going to say any more about that because I don't want to give that away. It was a very fun surprise. But just the story itself, it was funny. There were times that actually, like, I would chuckle out loud. And I feel like when a classic does that, even just all of the time that has passed, between when this book was written and today's world, like, you can still find things that are, like, funny and relatable. That gives it an extra mark up for me, I guess. So if you don't know the story of Ivanhoe, he is a knight that went off to fight in the Crusades, and his father disowned him, and so he comes back and is kind of trying to get on his dad's good side, but he's in disguise. And anyway, there's a big battle. There's some underlying storylines. It was just everything. This was good. This was such a good adventure story, I think, and I am very, very glad that I read it, and I cannot wait to read some more of his works. And then we have Agnes Grey by Anne Bronte. I read this for the Literary Life podcast. They are reading through this book and then doing podcast episodes each week, and I listened to this on Audible. So I was going to read the book, but then I decided just to listen to it, and I didn't enjoy the narrator, but I enjoyed the book a lot. The story was very good. It definitely felt very Jane Eyre to me. However, I mean, it had its own, flavor to it as well. So Agnes is the daughter, she's the younger daughter of a clergyman, and they they don't have a lot, like they're comfortable, but they don't have a lot of extra money or anything, and her dad is getting sicker and sicker, I think. So like the older sister is selling paintings and doing different things, and Agnes just wants to help her family, but they kind of all treat her like a baby, and she can't, they think that she can't really do much, but she wants to be a governess. So they give in, they let her go off and be a governess, and the first family that she was with was just, they treated her terribly. And she kind of stuck through it, but it was pretty hard. And so they ended up letting her go. She went back home for a while. She felt very defeated, and her family kind of was like, yeah, see, we told you you couldn't do it. But she wanted to prove them wrong, and she wanted to, again, help support her parents. So she went to another family, and she was there for a couple of years. And in that time, there was just a lot of growth. She, again, they didn't treat her quite as badly, but it wasn't a great situation. And of course, she falls in love, and that's just another frustrating part of the story. Not frustrating in a bad way, but just to see her, she's in love and she doesn't know if he loves her back. And the family that she works for is kind of sabotaging her relationship with him. And just to see how she comes through the other side of that was good. Even though it was very similar to Jane Eyre, I love Jane Eyre, and so this didn't feel, completely original, I guess. But even though there were bits and pieces that reminded me so much of Jane Eyre, I still really enjoyed Agnes Grey a lot. This is definitely a classic that will go down as a favorite. And the last classic I had to share is Much Ado About Nothing by William Shakespeare. Of course, I listened to an Audible version. It was put on by BBC, and it was a dramatized full cast version. Dia recommended it to me in my May TBR video, and I am so glad she did because it was excellent. I had some extra credits to use, so I got the whole, I got a collection of like six comedies, I think, maybe, all done by BBC, the same cast. Oh, it was it was so good. So my husband and I watched a movie that had been on Amazon Prime earlier this year, like this winter. So I wanted to read the play myself, and I'm glad that I decided to listen to it, because just with, all of the cast members and everything, it definitely, it would have been great to read on my own. I totally could have done that, but I did enjoy, having a full cast. So I think that probably, I think it's probably my favorite Shakespeare that I have read so far. I think it was only my third one, so that's not a lot to say. But I have read snippets of other plays, and like heard the plot lines and different things. And I've read Lamb's Tales from Shakespeare, so like a children's version of all the stories. And definitely Much Ado About Nothing is at the top of my list. It's just funny. So if you're looking to get into Shakespeare, I think that would be a great introduction to his works. It's funny, it's easy to follow. There's not too many characters. Like you can follow along with it pretty easily. I realized, I think one of the things that I like about it is it feels almost very Pride and Prejudice to me, which is just fun to kind of make that connection. Pride and Prejudice is one of my favorite Jane Austens, not my very favorite, I don't think, but one of my favorites. I have loved the Keira Knightley version of the movie for years, and so just seeing the similarities between the story in Much Ado About Nothing, the couples in that, and Pride and Prejudice was just a fun connection, like I said, to me. All right, well, that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for sticking around. I would love to know what you read in May. It is so fun to see the comments, to see what people are reading. I almost always put a couple more books on my TBR just from the comment sections where you guys are mentioning what you're reading, because there's just so many books out there, and it is fun to hear what other people are excited about. So thank you again for being here, and we will see you in the next video.